Okay guys, let's go over the 12 o'clock review over what we spoke about today. FINL was mentioned right off the bat today. Oops, need to switch these 1 second. Okay. And FINL, if we go to a daily chart, you can see it was gapping under this base here, and I mentioned early on this morning that you could play it under this 2-minute low here at 89, and you could have got in at 22.89. Your stop would have been over 23.19. And the target on this, if we go to the daily chart, we can see, or maybe it's more prominent on the, no, maybe it's on the daily. Right here down to 2050 is what I was talking about. Or let's see, was it 2050? $21.54, the high of this area right here, and it came all the way down to $21.24. So it came exactly where it wanted to go, where I was expecting it to go. So if you would have been in on that this morning, once it got down to this area, you could have covered it right there at the 21.54 area. Let's call it 21.56, and it's $1.33. On a 33-cent stop. It's a 4-hour trade. So that was FINL. That was the first call of the day. It worked out really, really well. Then Bob mentioned CBG. And if we go to the daily chart on CBG, he mentioned it was breaking over. It opened at 88. It was breaking over this buy setup, a sloppy buy setup of sorts. And his entry, he called for 20.01, but it never triggered. So it never triggered this morning. Then we just forgot about it after that. So he called that, but then it never triggered. So that was CBG, and now it's getting right back up to that now. Now, if you use that buy setup strategy that I talk about in the letter. Once the buy setup triggers above 1979, we look for the 5 minutes buy setup that holds above that. This one did not hold above it because it went to 78. Missed it by a penny. This is the first one that pulled back that you could have bought right here, and that entry would be $20 by 1993. And so you'd still be in that one, and that one would have triggered at 11:35. Wasn't called in the room, but that would have been the entry on the 60, we call it 5 strategy. Or that would be the daily 5 strategy, daily buy setup 5 strategy. Then Moses mentioned Guild, G-I-L-D. And Guild today was gapping over this big base here, 47.88. High over here is 47.97. So really wanted to see it over 47.97, and he just mentioned that. And Moses, are you here right now? He told me he was going to. He said he was going to mention his entry, but he never did. He said he got. I think he said he got in like at 48.04, if I recall. What was your entry on this? 48.04. Is that right? If I remember right. And how did you enter that? What was your entry? A 2-minute high would have been 48.01. A 5-minute high would have been over 15. Do you have a? How did you do that? You have a little 1-minute base here. That would have been over 01 as well. He could have done that one base and just got in late too, possibly. So I was just curious. The 2-minute, 2-minute high. So I guess he did this red bar ignore, but he just chased it a little bit, right? And you chased it a little bit. Okay. So now Moses, are you still in that trade right now? Okay, so tell me where you got out at, if you don't mind. Let's talk about this. You got stopped out at 48.72. So he played a 2-minute trail all the way up to here, right, Moses? You took a 2-minute trail out around 10 o'clock? Is that correct? I'm assuming that's it because that's a 2-minute trail. So Moses, do you always use a 5-minute trail? So the 2-minute trail right here was at under 73, and that would have been 72. If you use the 5-minute trail, yep, it was under 72. Same thing. Now Moses, do you always sell everything? Do you always sell everything at once, or do you ever sell in pieces? Because what I would encourage is, guys, when you have a daily that's broken out and you've got void forever, you do not want to sell this trade too soon. This is the one you want to hold all day long. So what's a way, guys, that we can hold it along all day long on this trade? What's a way we can hold it all day long? Anybody? Any thoughts? We talk about it all the time. Oh, all or none, Carolyn's saying. Yeah, you can do all or none. That would have been a great idea as well. All or none's one way, but what's the way I always talk about in the room? If you use a 5-minute pivot, guys. So here's your 5-minute pull pivot. So you could have added back in here. Your stop would have been under 43, Moses. Now it pulls back again. Goes up again. Now your stop could be under 50. Goes up again. Now your stop could be under 48.65. Pulls back again. Now your stop could be under 48.84. You'd still be in this. You'd have another $1.60 in that, Moses. So good trade, but you got to work on that management. Okay? You got to work on that management, especially when you have a stock like this that has a daily that has nothing in its way. This thing can go forever. So great job, but yeah, work on that. If it was resistance there, I say sell everything. But you had plenty of room here on that one. But good job on the entry. IMGN, I mentioned as well. IMGN, I wanted to get over 1480, which is over this area here. And I mentioned you could take the 5-minute buy if you wanted to, but it was aggressive. It wasn't my entry. There was no location here. And you can see because of no location, again, it did not work. And so that kept you out. But I said if you're aggressive and you wanted to take it, you could. CF was also mentioned. I also mentioned. CF again on the daily. We always start with the daily, guys. Had this buy setup triggering over 182.85. This pullback back under 182.85. Carolyn, this is what you were talking about. I was talking about here. The pullback full under the daily trigger, so I don't take this one. And you can see you could have scalped it. It worked for a nice scalp, but for a long-term day trade, it didn't work. You can see that. So again, I said you could take this if you're aggressive. It was at a location. It had a 200 MA. It had a rising 8, and 182.49 to 181. That was about a buck 18 or so. You could have made a R or two there on the scalp, depending on how you traded that. But it was aggressive trade, and I like a different location. And then BIDU was also mentioned. I mentioned BIDU. And BIDU, guys, if you go to the daily chart, also had a daily buy set up, one to get above 147.50. The 5-minute pullback was actually triggering right here, and I said you could take it if you're aggressive. It wasn't my entry, and again, it didn't work. Pulling back, Carolyn, above the breakout area. Another one. So that would have been a stop if you took in that. I said it was aggressive. It wasn't my entry, but you could take it. And then RIM was mentioned. I mentioned RIM. RIM had a sloppy buy setup of sorts. I mentioned you could take this 5-minute pullback. Again, pulling back to 1398. Now this one did, Carolyn, trigger a pull back above the breakout of the buy setup, but it wasn't a good buy setup. See how sloppy that was? So it really wasn't a good. It wasn't a good daily, and I said that at the time. It wasn't a good daily, and of course, that 5-minute buy setup did not work because it wasn't a nice clean daily, or at least that's my expectation why it didn't work. The second one would have worked. The second one would have worked down here at 91.75. And then RTN. RTN I also mentioned. And RTN was under a green bar here, so it was a money or pro gap of sorts. Actually, Carolyn mentioned this. I mentioned it as aggressive, and then Carolyn mentioned the 2-minute sell setup. I liked this inertia early on, but I was concerned because it was still in an uptrend. And Carolyn likes to take this 2-minute sell right here, and at the time she mentioned it, I told her that I wouldn't take it because of the daily location. I'd want some alternative confirmation, and you never got it. And if you didn't take it, that would have saved you because it's not working out. It's holding up here. The daily is holding here now, and you can see it's probably going to reverse. So again, guys, if you're taking a short in your plan, does the daily have to be in a downtrend? If it's not in a downtrend, it's going to be higher risk. Can you take it? Yes, but you can only take it if it's in your plan to do so, and you better have a tighter stop. Okay? So it saved Carolyn because I told her that she got out at break even. But for me, if you don't have the daily, you better only scalp. And I normally don't even take them unless they're climactic. And WYN, oh no, never mind WYN. Guild, Guild, Gold. I mentioned gold this morning, guys. Gold last week gold on Monday had a weekly buy setup that triggered. I mentioned, and Trish traded that on Monday when I mentioned that, and I told her I didn't think it was the best entry. She ended up stopping out on that intraday trade. I told her that often gold comes back and trades back down again. This would have been a much better entry based on how it's traded in the past. Over this bicep that triggered today over 61.46. Now we haven't had a 5-minute pullback yet. This one did not hold above 61.46. This one didn't hold above 61.46. This one didn't hold above 61.46. It almost did. So it's still trying to, and you can see it's still struggling. But I like that as a possible swing. So basically, you got a weekly buy setup. Also, you got a daily buy setup within it. And your stop would be under this buy setup if you're playing it as a swing basis under the 159.81 area. So you had a weekly and a daily buy setup triggering. The daily buy setup, and you look for, the weekly triggers, and you look for a daily buy setup entry, and we got it. And then I also, Guild, I mentioned after Moses did, I mentioned a Guild again. Moses drew my attention to it this morning. And I said you could take this first 5-minute pullback. Again, Guild, Carolyn, here's another one. Guild had to get above 47.88. The first 5-minute pullback, pulled back, Carolyn, and it held above 47.88 right there. You could have got in at 60. Your stop would be 53. Had another double bottom, and now it's on its way. So another one that worked, Carolyn, that worked above the breakout. It's working right now. And then KITD, David mentioned that one. KITD I mentioned this morning as well, that I liked it. It was actually in the letter. It was a 60-minute base play that I have in the letter every day. Love the 60-minute base from yesterday. I said if it got above the base, we could play it. But the problem was the base was 742, and we opened at 780. So 40 cents on that big of a stock is too much. I said I'd never play that, being that up. If it comes back here, you could play it again. The base was 742. This pullback was above 742, but it didn't work. Now, when it pulled back, guys, and I talked about this earlier today, look at when it was starting to trigger, the 8 was already hooking over, right? It was at a location, but the 8 was hooking over. And then again, look at the quality of the daily. The daily was good, but didn't the daily hit support? The daily hit the target. I said this pre-market that the target was right around this gap fill here at 810, and sure enough, that's exactly where it went. So that buy setup would not have been good. It already hit the target for the day. This was the target. It hit it. I just didn't get an entry on it. Now if we go to 2-minute chart, let's see if there would have been an entry there just for the fun of it. And yes, you could have got an entry on the 2-minute, Carolyn. Here's your 2-minute opposite, Carolyn. You like to do the 2-minute sell. Here's a 2-minute buy that you could have played right here at 68 under 51, and you could have done well with that right to the target. So the 2-minute would have worked there on that one, Carolyn. Let's see on Guild. And now I'm curious because Guild also worked. Let's go back to Guild and see if the 2-minute would have worked on that, because that one also pulled back above 47.88, 47.97. So let's see if the 2-minute, the first 2-minute pull back above 47.97 would have worked. So this one triggered here, but there was no location. This one had, if you would have waited for a location right here, you would have played it here. 45, that's 43. You may have gotten stopped if you used a 2-cent stop if you played that one right there. But if you gave it 3 cents, 42. Let's see if that one held. Held, and now it's off the races. So the 2-minute would have worked there if you would have given a 3-cent stop, Carolyn, just FYI. And then Sky, I have something NBA, something, I guess I didn't write it down right. Something NBA? I can't read my writing. NIBX, maybe that was it. NBI or NBIX, was that it? Oh yeah, NBIX. Okay, so NBIX, Sky mentioned under 770, and that's right there, 770. He mentioned that, and I wanted to see it get under 770, which it did. But the first sell setup wasn't under 770, Carolyn. Seeing that would have saved you. Or actually, this one was right here. But at the time that happened, this happened at 10:15. We're already pretty far down when it happened. So I wanted an alternative entry. Wait for more confirmation. We never got it. I still think this could be better, good for later, but it's got to get back on below now. That was NBIX. And then I also mentioned DISCA, which is wonderful. And DISCA was this over this 3-day base here. And somebody in the who was it in the room? Martin mentioned, why about the 60-minute candle? How could I buy that there? And I said it was because of the power of the daily, even though that 60-minute was engulfing. And so what we were looking at is it was a very nice clean pullback here. If we go back to the 5-minute chart here, it's a very nice clean pullback here into support area. So you could have played the 15-minute buy setup or the 5-minute. Let's go to the 15 here. The 15 was clean here. You could have played it. Now another way you could have entered this is you could have played a small amount of shares over the first 5. This is an extended move. As soon as this 5 triggers, you could have played a small amount there, and then added on to it over this red bar right there. and that you could have got like an 8-cent stop there, and that would have been a really great entry. So that was 2 different ways that you could have traded that. And then Michael mentioned Intel buy setup. Intel had a daily break over this base here, but when the 5-minute buy setup set up, I mentioned that, well, you can't see this on this chart. Let's go to 60. You just got through this 60-minute base when this 5-minute set up. So I said it had gone way too far, and you need some more time to cool off. Is this closer to a top or a bottom here? I said it was closer to a top. You need to relax a little bit. This isn't ideal. I'm not going to buy a breakout that's up 4 or 5 bars into the breakout, and that was Intel. And so far, since I've mentioned that, it's came right back in. So he hopefully didn't take that, and I saved him there because that buy setup did not work, and it's coming exactly in like I said. And then finally, Ross. Michael mentioned Ross, R-O-S-T, I believe. Ross Storage, which was R-O-S-T. And he mentioned it as a possible short. And what the daily's an uptrend, so I told him to be careful there. If you go to a 60-minute chart, though, it has lots of void here. Had to get under 58.31. He was calling 58.30. Let's go to the 15-minute chart here. So the problem is it came straight down this 15-minute. It was pretty extended there when that happened. So we wait for it to break, Carolyn, we wait for it to break that 58.30, and the first sell setup was back above 58.30, so you can't take it. So again, that saved you. So, but we can look at it later today. So that's pretty much it. It reinforces those rules I've been talking to you guys about in the room. I hope that was helpful. And we'll review again tomorrow at the same time, or we'll review again on Monday, same time, 12 o'clock every day. We'll go over the plays. So if you guys like what you heard, be back here tomorrow. Be back here next week at 12.